Hey everybody, we are on site again. So we are at the Villages of Park DuValle. But as I was talking about earlier, we talked about Southwick and Carter homes in our introduction. And so I wanted you to see what Southwick and Carter homes looks like now, because it doesn't look anything like those pictures I was showing you. So about 27 years ago, they tore down Southwick and Connor homes and they built these homes, which they called them the Villages of Park DuValle. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a walking tour with a member from our zoning committee here who's going to talk to us about how they developed this area, how many houses are built in this area. And they're going to talk to us about what they call middle homes, which is homes that are multifamily, but they're not like large apartment buildings. So the whole conversation will kind of revolve around zoning and how zoning is such a critical part of developing the city and developing the West End, and how it was a critical part of segregation and redlining. So we're going to touch on both of those issues during this interview, so stay tuned. I am so lucky and so excited to be here with Joel Dock. He is a representative from Metro Louisville Zoning. Joel, introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Joel Dock. I'm a planning supervisor with Louisville Metro's Office of Planning and Design Services. And one of my primary responsibilities for the last several years has been coordinating and managing the land development code reform effort, or zoning reform.
So tell me a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, so the land development code reform is a process of changing our land development regulations, so what can be built and how it can be built on property to achieve greater equity in how we deliver housing. So we are looking at exploring changes to our land use regulations that allow for more housing options, allow for more housing access, and allow for a really interesting concept called middle housing, which is a range of multi-unit structures that are comparable and consistent with nearby single-family houses. So it might be a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex. Some interesting examples that we'll see in the neighborhood we're in right now called cottage courts, townhouses, attached units. It's that everything in between your single family home and your large apartment complex, that middle housing, that missing housing. And it's been illegal since zoning took effect in the 1930s here in Louisville.
Now, why was it made illegal? I was curious about that.
Okay, so when zoning came about, there was the idea that land uses should be separated from each other, and uses should all be separated from each other, and that single family uses and single family homes should exist without the intrusion of apartment homes and tenement housing and the intrusion of commercial businesses. That also gave way to the ideologies of racism at the time and racism in planning, in the thought process that the tenancy of apartment homes, of multifamily living, gave way to a greater concentration of African American populations, and that single family zoning specifically would become part of the toolkit for racial segregation in Louisville. Single family zoning was propped up by racial covenants and deed restrictions. It was propped up by redlining schemes. It was propped up by the Federal Housing Administration, who said you had to have a racial covenant if you wanted to build a subdivision. And so as those mechanisms come off and become illegal, redlining disbanded in the 1950s. The legacy of redlining is immense. The stolen capital from black communities through redlining, and deed restrictions become unenforceable by the courts in 48. They become unenforceable privately with the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. But you still have this remnant of zoning, specifically single-family zoning. And our single-family zoning means one home, one lot, and the majority of our single-family zoning is one home, one lot, 9,000 square feet. That 9,000 square feet has been unchanged since 1963.
Really?
So while there were processes that took off other mechanisms, the legacy of single-family zoning and the legacy of isolation and segregation, particularly of white wealth and the hoarding of services, is still embedded within our zoning code through the single family zoning district. And so what we have is single family zoning and a fight to have multifamily zoning if you ask for a rezoning. And the land development code reform recognizes the importance of middle housing, the importance of middle housing in our older communities, to provide housing options, to provide affordable housing options. In neighborhoods like this where we see that, and we're in Park DuValle, in neighborhoods like this where we see a mixing of single family homes and duplexes and triplexes and townhouses and cottage courts mixed in, homeowners and renters. We're in a community where we have 40% home ownership and 60% rental.
Oh, I
living
didn't know there was
living
that much.
all together.
And beautifully.
So
let's take a walk and see it. All right, Joel, so this is an example of middle housing, right?
This is an example of middle housing right here. We've got, I believe this is 5 units attached.
Okay.
You can see how the collection of attached units has a variety of building materials, orientation towards the street, good pedestrian connectivity, and it follows the curvature of the road.
Okay.
So it's really well designed, and it's no taller,
Than the regular
no
house.
different than the single family housing that's out on Russell Lee Drive. It's very compatible. It's consistent with single family, and it provides options for renters. And in the event that you want to drop a property line in the middle and sell these off,
Individually.
it provides that opportunity for home ownership. So middle housing is very much pro-rental, and it's very much pro-housing, pro-home ownership. Middle housing expands opportunities and, different variations of home ownership options instead of just the one home on one lot. It allows for one home on one lot, but it allows for one home on one lot in different varieties, like what we see here.
Right. Now, down this alley or down this road is the back of some could be rentals as well as homeowners. So they just come in and then enter their houses through the back.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So what you have here on the right side of the alley, these are single family homes. And on the opposite side of the alley, we're coming up on a cottage court.
Okay.
A cottage court is a collection of typically single family residences. They could be attached residences, but there's no vehicle street.
Let's go in the court then.
It's centered around a pedestrian walkway and a green space that provides for a sense of community internal to a small collection of homes within a larger neighborhood. So what is really surprising about the cottage courts that we find here in Park DuValle is that from the street, I couldn't tell from driving down the street, walking down until you get really close, that these are actually attached units. So each of the structures here is actually a duplex.
Okay.
And so you have 2 units, and you've got 1, 2, 3 principal structures, each with a duplex. And then you've got a really nice end cap of a duplex that's much wider and single story. So you can see that no cars can drive through the center here. There's opportunity for maybe a community garden. Maybe that space for individuals to have a space out front where they can enjoy the company of their neighbors.
Yeah.
And we can provide, again, different options that are extremely consistent with single family homes that are immediately adjoining the site.
And this is so nice. So we're coming up on what looks like a single family house to me, Joel, but I see 2 addresses.
Yeah, you're right.
I see 2 address numbers. So this is a duplex.
Yeah, this is a duplex, and it holds the corner here. And so what's really unique about this style of duplex is that we've got orientation and entrances facing both streets. So from one street, it's a single family home facing that street, and from the other street, it's a single family home facing this way. But it's a duplex, 2 stories. We can see the addresses. That's one way to tell it's middle housing, but often, maybe you can't find the address. So maybe you look for mailboxes. Maybe you look for how many meters are available. As we come from this duplex, we're coming across a attached townhouse style triplex. So this is 3 units attached.
This is 3. Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is 3. So it gets a little wider in the front, but it still is comparable and consistent with nearby single-family homes.
And it's so cute.
What's really great about the Villages of Park DuValle is its approach of suburban and traditional styles. So we have front yards, we have green space, but we have really great design.
All the houses don't look the same. It's not a cookie cutter.
It is not a cookie cutter neighborhood.
All the fabrics are different. All the designs are different.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so as we move from the duplex on the corner,
yeah,
the 3-unit townhouses, we move into another duplex. It's got a similar design to the one on the corner, but it's a duplex entrance here on the side. It's really unnoticeable that it's a duplex, except for this sidewalk
except for the sidewalk
and a side porch. But other than that, there's nothing that gives it away as being, a duplex,
right,
or more than one unit.
So if you're driving down the street, you're not even going to pay any attention.
No.
So you might notice that on that side, that's a
we've got another
4 dwellings.
Yeah, we've got another townhouse style.
Townhouse style.
You've got a duplex attached here. You've got a single family on the corner.
This is awesome.
So then, what's really interesting about middle housing is we've kind of alluded to already. Sometimes you can't tell, and so we've got this great example here on the corner. And if you recall from our event with AARP, we did a little test. And we tried to decide how many units were here.
Yeah, I think
we had some higher end of 4 units. We had some lower end of 1 unit, and I think we ultimately determined that this is a duplex. It's just a little bit roomier than your other duplex down there on the corner, or where we were here mid-block. And then you can notice that these 2 duplexes before, this is a single building material. That's 2 different building materials. So there's just a variation of design, a variation of good quality
This one's
design.
got like 4.
Yeah.
Which in my opinion is just maybe a little too busy. But it's still, but it's interesting. And you've got different fences. Some have fences, some don't have fences. It's very homey. Very homey.
Where do you want to go next?
I want to see
we've
some
got the other cottage court right here.
Okay.
That's a little different.
Okay. And then we need to show a few single, and then we can take it home.
Okay.
And the thing that's interesting to me, Joel, is this development is about what, 30 years old?
It's going on about 20.
Oh, got to be more than that.
It's going on. It's the Villages of Park DuValle. The Cotter and Lang housing projects were torn down in the 1990s. And the Villages of Park DuValle was a Hope 6 redevelopment project.
Okay.
Park DuValle originally began as this was a low-lying area. It was developed by freed African Americans following emancipation in the Civil War. It was a low-lying area, and it was built up it was an African American community. It became a prosperous African American community known as South Parkland, or Little Africa. And it prospered through the 1920s and the 1930s. And then you have slum clearance and urban renewal programming coming in that said, look, the housing conditions are dilapidated. We're ignoring the community. The housing conditions are poor, so we just got to remove that. The city said those housing conditions have to be removed, and it was a complete, ignorance of the community that existed there. It just so happened that because of how it was developed in a low-lying area, and it was developed with the building materials that the individuals had at that time, that the housing conditions were subpar. There wasn't, not everything had running water. But individuals like James Cotter and the Parkland Community Associations at the times, they built houses, they built roads, they built sidewalks, they built a community. And then when slum clearance and urban renewal programming came about, they looked at only the housing conditions, and they ignored the fabric of the community and the society that existed within it. And then the Cotter and Lang housing projects were built through that programming. the Cotter and Lang housing projects fell victim to what many housing projects fall victim to, lack of funding. Lack of funding led to further dilapidation, lack of services, lack of availability of services. And, residents that were predominantly African American that had that legacy and history of being redlined and having the wealth from their homes stolen through those programs that didn't allow people to invest, that completely depreciated the value of their homes. And so you have that history of a lack of wealth attainment, just being concentrations of poverty lead to concentrations of crime, and Cotter and Lang was eventually removed. Hope 6 was an evolution of kind of housing development, and Hope 6 wanted to provide a little bit more hope, let's just say. And so they took this approach to, instead of building housing projects, they wanted to build mixed income communities. When more people of different ranges of incomes and economic and social backgrounds come together, you've got a greater diversity and you've got a greater ability to thrive. And so that is kind of the goal behind the Villages of Park DuValle. It's a mixed income community. I've highlighted 60% renters, 40% owners, a mixing of single family home ownership options and multi-unit middle housing options.
Right.
So that's just a little background on Park DuValle and how we got to where we are now. And I really like to highlight the Villages of Park DuValle as one of Louisville's best examples of new construction middle housing. It's new construction middle housing that's affordable, it's attainable, and it provides opportunity in this area.
And affordability, do you have an idea of what rents are in the...
I do not.
Okay, that's okay. And that's hard to know because they're constantly moving.
Yeah, many of the properties that are maintained here are maintained by the Louisville Metro Housing Authority.
Okay.
And so you have a number of housing choice voucher recipients,
Gotcha.
Often known as Section 8 recipients.
Gotcha. And everything looks brand new. I mean, you don't see a whole... I mean, there's always, some painting that could be done. But as far as the overall look and feel of the area,
my
the whole
house
area
needs paint.
Yeah.
I need to paint my house. It's just a matter of finding the time to do it.
And who has time for that?
And who has time?
Now, this is another cottage court.
Yeah, that's right. This is another cottage court. And this one is even a little trickier to determine, what it is from the street.
Yeah.
For the longest time, I didn't know these units were attached. And I had driven by here, and it wasn't until I got in here that I realized that, and we can walk here. These are public roads. They just don't have cars on them.
They just don't have cars, okay.
So what's really interesting is they're single family, and then they have these little connecting pieces between them. And they've all got their own front porch. That was really big here in the Villages of Park DuValle, that everyone had either a private front porch or a private balcony.
Okay.
That everyone had their own private outdoor space.
Gotcha.
But again, with these cottage courts, the ability to create that sense of community without the interruption of vehicles and the parking of vehicles is just such a benefit to this type of development. These are cottage courts that end. They come to a terminus with some units, but there are many examples that exist in our older neighborhoods of through pedestrian streets, going from a local road to a commercial corridor. Examples like Maplewood Place that go from Fernwood to Bardstown Road, connecting the local, the neighborhood with the commercial corridor without walking down a vehicular street. And you have, that specific street, if you recall, is just heavy with vegetation and gardens and tree coverage and canopy. So these cottage courts provide an opportunity to get at our urban heat island. They provide an opportunity to provide, homes that are closer together. The overall footprint of delivering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 units is much smaller than 8 units on individual lots with a road in between, with sidewalks, maybe with an alley, maybe with a detached garage, with a larger backyard. These cottage courts reduce our footprint. They are more sustainable than the model that we have in place right now, which is single family model only.
Single family only, yeah. And the great part about this is you have green space, you have birds, you have all of this without having a whole yard to worry about.
Right.
Because at some point, when you're young, you don't want to worry about the yard because you're
Right.
out doing fun stuff. And when you get old, you don't want to worry about the yard because you don't want to worry about the yard. So
Right.
this gives you a yard without having a large amount of mowing and other things to maintain.
Right, and
Yeah.
green space like this in front yards can be maintained in common.
Yes,
You know,
because
you can even put together a program of the unit on the end does it 1 week, the second unit does it another week, or you could all pay into something.
and which is probably what I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember we saw that when we were in the Highlands,
Right.
with the area you were talking about, which was awesome. And most of those places that we toured that day, I didn't even know they existed.
That's the great thing about Middle House. You don't know it exists.
And I would assume, traveling at a safe speed through here, I wouldn't notice this either.
You probably wouldn't.
Driving by. Yeah, it's
No,
not
you
until
probably-
not until you get
There's
on
nowhere
foot.
for you to turn.
Well, yeah, and I'm just going to keep going. So I encourage everyone to get out and walk your neighborhood. You might find something exciting.
How you doing, sir?
All right, hi Sharon.
Well, hi. How are you? So the main thing I love about this neighborhood is something you don't normally see in a reasonably priced neighborhood, which is variety. Generally, I've been in Shively quite a bit, and they've built some
It's got some middle housing.
They've got middle housing, but they built some new
I found
neighborhoods. Did you? You'll have to show me where they are.
Yeah, some great duplex ranch style, like the end caps on the cottage course.
Okay, you got to tell me where those are so I can
send
go
you
see them.
pictures.
Thank you. But they've built some neighborhoods near Crumbs Lane and other areas, and every house looks the same. They're all siding houses. They're all, 3-1s, and that's what I love about this. These are all individual houses. These are single-family houses on the main courtyard. What street is this?
This is Russell Lee Drive.
Russell Lee Drive, and they're all different. They're all beautiful. We just set off somebody's alarm. So that means they're all protected. And I'm assuming that all the entrances for these houses are coming off the back. So there's a narrow road or an alley off the back where the driveways are and the garages are. But I mean, there's not many places you can go. On average, the single family homes in this area are running about $200 to $250. Which may sound like a lot, but for Louisville, I think our average housing price is $250 to $400. So to be able to get a nice house in a nice neighborhood with all this green space, with a variety of
Community center,
of
park,
community
up the street,
park.
easy access to downtown, the
I mean, you can get to the interstate
Mm-hmm.
in 2 seconds. I mean, you don't find that for under 200,000. And to be 100. It's nice to live with black people sometimes, and so sometimes it's difficult to find a nice house in a black neighborhood without necessarily going into the West End, where you may have a dilapidated house right next to a $200,000 house. So here it's consistent. All the houses are well maintained. The area is well maintained. I mean, there's nothing I can say bad about Park DuValle.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing to highlight is zoning didn't help here. So, I mean, this is a planned development. So, there's a variety of different zoning districts that are underneath this, but they've all essentially been made part of a larger master plan idea. And so the traditional rigors of zoning that exist in all other areas are not set up to facilitate this type of development. We need new zoning regulations to say this is what we want, and this is what we want built in neighborhoods. We want new subdivisions to be built with options for everyone. We want new subdivisions to be built on the land that's available with different options of housing that provide for a mixing of incomes and peoples and cultures, and that can't happen if we're only delivering one model of housing.
So you're saying if I owned an acre of land in the middle of Shively, let's do that I couldn't build this?
Most likely no.
Wow.
Yeah, most likely no. You're probably stuck with just single family unless you ask for a rezoning. And then with the rezoning, you got to make sure you've got all the capital to purchase the land, hire the attorneys, hire the developers, go through the entitlement process, and hope it all works out and you get your zoning approved. And then you got to make sure that you know, get your return on investment. And so that's where, without having procedures in place that allow for middle housing as an operation by right, we can't start to work off those other factors and work off those other barriers to housing, like, you know, building code. You know, we need to create a collection of builders and contractors that can specialize in building middle housing, that can specialize in duplexes, that can specialize in accessory dwelling units, that can specialize in townhouse or fourplex construction, that know exactly what needs to be done, how, when, and where. And we've created an environment where we've said, okay, the single family model is one thing and folks specialize in that, and then large apartment development is another specialty.
And nothing in the middle.
And nothing in the middle.
And a lot of people, because I have property management, and a lot of people like a small multi versus a big complex.
Right. And so if we can disperse and distribute, you know, multi-unit housing options throughout all areas, we don't have large apartment complexes that are concentrated, that conflict with the single family, you know, style and design and character. Even areas that are zoned that you might think allow for middle housing, because of minimum lot size standards, setback standards, open space standards, buffering standards. You know, we say the land development code, you know, the land development code treats, you know, a multi-unit structure next to a single family structure as an intrusion, and you have to provide landscape buffering in between them. So the land development code is set up to say that that use is incompatible with that use. Instead of where we are trying to go with our regulations to say that, like in this neighborhood, all of these uses are compatible with each other.
Yes.
We just need the regulations to allow it.
And why isn't this an example to let everybody kind of relax and let some of these standards?
This is a great example, and that's why we come here to highlight it.
All right, we're wrapping up our tour here. Joel is run off and going out to rezone somebody's house, I'm sure. Man, I learned so much today. I did not know that the Southwick Carter Homes projects were Little Africa. I've heard 100 times people say Little Africa, Little Africa. They demolished Little Africa. But Southwick and Carter Homes was Little Africa. At 28th and Dumanel, everything south of 28th and Dumanel was classified as Little Africa. On the other side of that was Parkland. And of course, Parkland was reserved for Caucasians, and the other side, which is where they end up putting the Southwick and Carter Homes projects, was Little Africa. And so now it's the Village of Park DuValle. And so there's a lot of progress taking place here in Louisville. Things are getting better, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. There's still definitely systemic racism, and there's definitely redlining. I literally had a lender tell me he wouldn't lend on a property that was located at 28th in Virginia because he didn't like the area. Well, I called bullshit on that, and I always will, and I let him know how I felt about it. And I encourage everyone to push back when you see it, say something about it and make it public, and let's have more great stories like the story here at the Villages of Park DuValle.